First contact with death. The Galactic Research Council's pristine white halls had never seen anything quite like Dr. Kavia Nellerx's latest discovery. The elegant Ardanian scientist's crystalline antennae flickered with excitement as she presented her findings to the assembled council members, their varied anatomies filling the curved amphitheater with a rainbow of alien forms. Esteemed colleagues, she began, her translator converting her harmonic speech into standard galactic common. What I am about to share will challenge everything we know about biological resilience. She gestured to the holographic display behind her, showing a dusty red planet with 3 moons. This is mining outpost HC 249, what humans call New Providence. 3 standard cycles ago, we detected traces of Nexilium-7 in its atmosphere. A ripple of concern passed through the audience. Nexilium-7 was infamous throughout known space, a naturally occurring neurotoxin so potent that even environmental suits couldn't fully protect against its effects. It had claimed countless lives during the early days of galactic exploration. As per protocol, we prepared to evacuate the human mining colony. Kavia continued, her antennae now pulsing with a blue glow of scientific fascination. But when we arrived, we found something extraordinary. She paused, allowing the tension to build. The humans were not only alive, they were thriving. The hologram shifted to show footage of human miners going about their daily work, protected only by basic filtration masks. Several council members leaned forward in their seats, their various sensory organs fixed on the impossible scene before them. At first, we assumed their protective gear was more advanced than it appeared, Kavia explained. But upon inspection, we found their equipment to be remarkably primitive by our standards. The filters they used wouldn't stop half the known toxic compounds in the atmosphere. And yet, she played another clip, this one showing medical readings from various human subjects. Their bodies were adapting, not just surviving, actively developing resistance to the toxin. In 3 generations of miners, what began as a deadly threat has become little more than an irritant. High Counselor Zextal, their chitinous form gleaming under the chamber's lights, raised an appendage. Dr. Nellerx, are you suggesting these humans have somehow evolved to resist Nexilium-7 in mere generations? That's beyond improbable. With respect, High Counselor, that's exactly what I'm suggesting. But it goes further. Kavia's antennae shifted to a deep purple of academic intensity. We've discovered that this isn't an isolated incident. Human historical records show countless examples of their species adapting to toxic environments within their lifetimes. The hologram displayed a series of Earth locations, ancient mercury mines where workers developed resistance to metal poisoning, communities living in high radiation areas with unexplained resilience, and populations with inherited immunities to various poisons. Their planet, Earth, is what we classify as a death world, Kavia continued. But we've never fully understood what that meant until now. Humans don't just survive their harsh environment. They become stronger because of it. Their cells have an unprecedented ability to adapt to toxic exposure. Their liver can process compounds that would dissolve most species' internal organs, and their nervous system shows remarkable plasticity in response to chemical threats. She brought up a new image, showing a complex molecular structure. This is why I've requested emergency funding for a new research initiative. With the humans' cooperation, we could revolutionize our understanding of xenobiology. Their adaptive capabilities could hold the key to protecting all species against chemical and biological threats. The chamber erupted in discussion, dozens of alien voices mixing in a cacophony of excitement and skepticism. High Counselor Zextal raised their appendage again, bringing silence to the room. And these humans, they've agreed to participate in such research. Kavia's antennae curved in what translated to a smile. Not only agreed, High Counselor, they're eager to help. I have already spoken with their scientific advisory board. They're sending their best biochemist, Dr. James Chen, and his research team to assist us. She brought up one final hologram, showing a human vessel approaching the Galactic Research Council's orbital station. They arrive tomorrow, and with them, colleagues, we begin a new chapter in galactic medical science, one that may finally bridge the gap between Deathworlders and the rest of galactic society. As the council chamber filled with excited discussions about security protocols and research parameters, Kavia felt her antennae tingling with anticipation. She had spent her entire career studying toxic resistance across species, but humans, these remarkable, resilient beings, might hold the key to her life's work. She looked at the approaching human ship once more and felt a shiver of excitement run through her crystalline form. Tomorrow couldn't come soon enough. What she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that this was just the beginning. The humans would soon prove themselves capable of far more than simply surviving toxins. They were about to change everything the galaxy thought it knew about the limits of biological adaptation. And it would all start with a simple question. What happens when you push a species that evolved to adapt past every limit the galaxy has ever known? They were about to find out. The experiment. The research facility's main laboratory hummed with the soft pulse of containment fields as Dr. James Chen examined the latest test results. Around him, a diverse collection of alien scientists watched with a mixture of fascination and unease as holographic displays showed the molecular breakdown of yet another lethal compound being systematically dismantled by human cellular structures. Remarkable, whispered Dr. Tixela, her insectoid mandibles clicking softly. Your lymphocytes aren't just resisting the toxin, they're learning from it. James nodded, his dark eyes fixed on the dancing molecules above the testing chamber. At 45, he had the weathered look of someone who'd spent too many years in labs, but there was an intensity to his gaze that spoke of unwavering focus. It's similar to how our immune system adapts to pathogens, but faster. The real question is why. Before anyone could respond, the lab's attention shifted to the entrance as Sarah Chen, James's daughter, and lead test subject, walked in for her daily examination. At 28, she carried herself with the quiet confidence of someone who'd grown up in laboratories. Her presence had become something of a legend in the facility over the past 3 months. Ready for today's round? She asked, rolling up her sleeve with practiced ease. Kavia Nellerx's crystalline antennae flickered with concern. The concentration is triple what we used yesterday. Are you certain? I'm sure, Sarah interrupted gently. The previous doses barely gave me a headache. If we want to understand the full extent of human adaptation, we need to push harder. The assembled scientists exchanged glances. They had started with toxins that would kill most species instantly, only to watch Sarah's body neutralize them within hours. Each subsequent test revealed new aspects of human cellular resilience that defied conventional xenobiology. Very well, Kavia agreed, though her antennae betrayed her anxiety. Please enter the chamber. Sarah stepped into the transparent enclosure, settling into the reclined chair as medical sensors activated around her. James moved to the control panel, his fingers hovering over the release mechanism for the latest compound, a neural disruptor that had proven fatal to every known sentient species. Beginning test series 47, he announced, his professional tone masking the parental concern in his eyes. Introducing compound NDX3 at 300% standard lethal dose. Initiating in 3, 2, 1. A fine mist filled the chamber. Sarah took a deep breath, then another. The assembled scientists held their collective breath, various appendages poised over emergency controls. For the first few minutes, nothing seemed to happen. Then Sarah's vital signs began to fluctuate. Her heart rate increased, pupils dilated, skin temperature rose 2 degrees. James's knuckles whitened on the control panel, but he didn't intervene. I can feel this one, Sarah reported, her voice steady despite the sweat beading on her forehead. It's like static electricity through my nervous system. Interesting. Dr. Tixela's manipulators danced over her monitoring station. Impossible. The compound is binding to her neural receptors, but instead of shutting them down, they're adapting. The molecular structure is being actively rewritten at the synapse level. Hour after hour, they watched as Sarah's body fought the toxin. What began as visible discomfort gradually subsided into mild irritation, then nothing at all. By the 6th hour, her readings had stabilized completely. Final analysis, Kavia announced, her antennae glowing with excitement. Subject has achieved complete neutralization of NDX3. Cellular examination shows development of novel protein structures that appear to provide ongoing immunity to the compound. The implications were staggering. Not only had Sarah survived a toxin that should have been universally fatal, but her body had developed a permanent defense against it. The adaptation had happened orders of magnitude faster than any known evolutionary process. As the day's tests concluded and Sarah emerged from the chamber, James finally allowed his professional demeanor to crack, pulling his daughter into a quick hug. "You did good, kid." "Thanks, Dad." She smiled, then turned to address the still stunned alien scientists. "So, what's next on the menu?" Before anyone could answer, the facility's emergency alert system activated. Red warning lights pulsed as Admiral Zextal's imposing form appeared on the main communication screen. "Dr. Nellerx, Dr. Chen. We have a situation." The Admiral's translated voice carried unmistakable urgency. "The Korthos Collective has just breached the Arcturus quarantine zone. They've acquired samples of the Terminus virus." A collective shudder ran through the alien scientists. The Terminus virus was legendary, a biological weapon so devastating its very existence had been classified. Created centuries ago by a now extinct species, it was kept under quarantine as a reminder of the horrors of biological warfare. "How bad?" James asked, already knowing the answer. "They're threatening to release it on Earth unless their demands are met. We estimate it would kill 99.9% of your population within weeks. There's no known defense." Sarah stepped forward, her face set with determination. "No known defense yet." She looked at her father, then at Kavia. "How quickly can we get a sample here?" The room erupted in protests, but Sarah raised her hand for silence. "We've proven human adaptation can overcome supposedly impossible toxins. If there's even a chance we can develop a defense against the virus, we have to try." James studied his daughter's face, seeing the same determination that had driven her mother's research until the end. "The risk is worth taking," Sarah finished. "We're Deathworlders, Dad. This is what we do. We adapt. We survive. We protect our own." Kavia's antennae pulsed with a complex mixture of emotions as she looked between father and daughter. The containment protocols alone would take 23 hours to implement properly. James interrupted, his scientist's mind already racing ahead. "We'll need to convert the entire West Wing into a level 10 quarantine zone, and we'll need volunteers." "You have one," Sarah said quietly. As the facility burst into frantic activity, preparing for the most dangerous experiment in its history, Kavia found herself wondering if they had only scratched the surface of human potential. These remarkable beings, who treated deadly toxins as challenges to overcome rather than sentences of death, were about to attempt something even their most optimistic models deemed impossible. But watching Sarah help coordinate the emergency preparations, her face showing no fear despite the stakes, Kavia realized something important. Perhaps impossible was just another word for something humans hadn't tried yet. Breaking point. The quarantine chamber's red warning lights cast an eerie glow across Sarah Chen's pale face as she watched the viral containment unit being sealed. 72 hours had passed since the first exposure to the Terminus virus, and her body was at war with itself. Temperature rising to 104.2 degrees Fahrenheit, Dr. Tixla reported, her manipulators dancing across the medical interfaces. Brain activity showing unusual spike patterns in the limbic system. James Chen pressed his hand against the transparent barrier separating him from his daughter, his weathered face tight with concern. "Sarah, we need to stop. Your system is—" "No," Sarah interrupted, her voice hoarse but determined. "Look at the viral load numbers." Kavia Nellerx's antennae flickered rapidly as she analyzed the data. "Impossible. The virus. It's not just being contained. The human immune response is actively destroying it. She turned to James. We've never seen anything like this. Her cells are developing completely novel defense mechanisms. Sarah managed a weak smile despite the fever racking her body. That's because we're not just fighting it. We're learning from it. She closed her eyes, gathering her strength. Each generation of cells is getting better at neutralizing the virus. We just need to hold out long enough for a complete adaptation. The assembled scientists watched in amazement as Sarah's immune system waged its microscopic war. The terminus virus, designed to be universally lethal, was meeting its match in human cellular adaptability. But the cost was becoming increasingly apparent. Organ stress reaching critical levels, Tixla warned. The adaptation process is putting enormous strain on her systems. James slammed his fist against the barrier. Enough. We're shutting this down, Dad. Sarah's voice was barely a whisper now, but it carried the same steel that had driven her through countless experiments. Remember what Mom used to say about the price of progress. James felt his throat tighten. His wife, Sarah's mother, had died pursuing a cure for a devastating neurological disease. Her last words had been about the importance of pushing boundaries, of being willing to risk everything to save others. Sometimes the greatest breakthroughs require the greatest sacrifices, he quoted softly. A violent seizure suddenly gripped Sarah, her body convulsing as her temperature spiked even higher. The medical alert screamed warnings as her vital signs went haywire. Multiple organ systems failing, Tixla reported urgently. We're losing her. Kavia rushed to the emergency protocols panel, initiating emergency cryostasis. Wait. James's sharp command froze everyone in place. He was staring at the molecular analysis display, his eyes wide. Look at her blood chemistry. The holographic display showed Sarah's cellular structure undergoing a radical transformation. Her immune system wasn't just fighting the virus, it was incorporating aspects of it, creating hybrid structures never seen before in any known species. The virus isn't killing her, James breathed. It's becoming part of her. Over the next few hours, they watched in stunned silence as Sarah's body temperature gradually stabilized. The seizures subsided. Her vital signs, though far from normal, stopped their dangerous decline. When she finally opened her eyes, they gleamed with an unusual iridescence, a side effect of her altered biology. Did it work? She asked weakly. Kavia's antennae pulsed with amazement as she reviewed the final analysis. Your body hasn't just developed immunity to the virus. It's weaponized it. Your cells are now producing compounds that actively seek out and destroy any trace of the original viral structure. A human-virus hybrid defense system, James explained, his voice mixing pride and concern. You've turned their weapon into a shield. Admiral Zextel's towering form appeared on the main communication screen, their chitinous features impossible to read. The Korthos Collective is demanding our response to their ultimatum. They're preparing to release the virus. Sarah pushed herself up, her movements shaky but determined. Let them try. She managed a grim smile. We're ready. The next 48 hours became legend in galactic history. When the Korthos Collective launched their biological attack, they expected Earth's population to be decimated. Instead, they watched in horror as human bodies, primed by a rapidly distributed vaccine derived from Sarah's adapted cells, not only survived but grew stronger. What should have been humanity's extinction became their evolution. In the quarantine chamber, Sarah watched the reports flood in, her altered eyes reflecting the streaming data. The price had been high. Her body would never be the same, and the long-term effects of her transformation were still unknown. But she had proven something extraordinary. That humanity's greatest strength wasn't just their ability to survive, but to transform their greatest challenges into advantages. You know what this means, she said to the assembled scientists, her voice stronger now. We've only begun to understand what we're capable of. Kavia's antennae glowed with a mix of awe and anticipation. Indeed, If human biology can adapt this dramatically to one virus, then we need to keep pushing. Sarah finished. There are more threats out there, more challenges to overcome. She turned to her father. Mom was right. The price of progress is high, but the cost of standing still is higher. James nodded, finally understanding. His daughter hadn't just survived. She had become something new, something that represented humanity's endless capacity for adaptation and growth. The galaxy would never look at humans the same way again. They weren't just Deathworlders anymore. They were evolution incarnate. Evolution's gift. The Galactic Medical Congress had never seen such attendance. Representatives from over 300 species packed the vast amphitheater, their diverse anatomies creating a living tapestry of evolutionary diversity. At the center of it all stood Sarah Chen, her iridescent eyes scanning the crowd as she prepared to present the results of 6 months of intensive research. Distinguished colleagues, she began, her voice carrying the slight resonant quality that had become characteristic of her transformed physiology. What we're about to share will fundamentally change our understanding of biological adaptation. The holographic display behind her came to life, showing the complex molecular structures that now comprise her cellular makeup. The hybrid human-virus architecture that had saved Earth had continued to evolve, creating something entirely new. As you can see, she continued, my altered biology didn't stop adapting after neutralizing the terminus virus. It kept going, incorporating beneficial aspects of every subsequent compound we tested. Dr. Kavia Nellerk stepped forward, her crystalline antennae pulsing with scientific excitement. The implications are extraordinary. The human adaptive response doesn't just overcome threats, it learns from them, integrating useful characteristics while discarding harmful ones. The display shifted to show comparative analyses between Sarah's original genetic structure and her current one. The differences were stark and fascinating. We've documented increased resistance to radiation, enhanced cellular repair, and even limited ability to synthesize nutrients from compounds that would be toxic to most species, Sarah explained. But more importantly, we've found a way to replicate these adaptations in controlled conditions. A murmur ran through the audience. This was the breakthrough they'd been waiting for. The possibility of sharing humanity's extraordinary resilience with other species. James Chen, standing quietly at the back of the stage, watched his daughter with a mixture of pride and concern. The toll of these discoveries was written in the subtle signs only a father could see. The slight tremor in her hands, the way she occasionally steadied herself against the podium. However, Sarah's voice took on a more serious tone. There are costs we must acknowledge. The human body wasn't designed for this level of rapid evolution. Each adaptation places tremendous stress on our systems. The display showed medical readings from her latest tests. The strain on her organs, the irregular patterns in her brain activity, the constant cellular turnover as her body struggled to maintain its new capabilities. I won't sugarcoat this, she continued. I'm burning through my cellular resources at an accelerated rate. My current life expectancy is... She paused, meeting her father's eyes briefly, uncertain. The amphitheater fell silent. The price of progress, always high, had become painfully personal. But Sarah's voice strengthened. What we've learned is worth every sacrifice. We've developed protocols to safely implement selected adaptations in other species. The first trials have been successful. The display showed footage of various alien test subjects surviving exposure to previously lethal conditions. A meridian-breathing toxic atmosphere, and Ardanian processing radiation levels that would normally be fatal, Exylaxian metabolizing corrosive compounds. This isn't just about making stronger soldiers or more resilient colonists, Sarah emphasized. It's about breaking down the biological barriers that have kept our species separate, about sharing the gifts that evolution and circumstance gave humanity. Dr. Tixela, who had been monitoring Sarah's vital signs throughout the presentation, stepped forward. The modifications we've developed are stable, inheritable, and can be customized for different species' physiologies. We're not just talking about individual treatments. We're talking about guided evolution on a galactic scale. The implications weren't lost on anyone present. Centuries of biological limitations could be overcome. Hostile worlds could be colonized. Ancient threats could be neutralized. But as the presentation concluded and the audience erupted in excited discussion, James made his way to his daughter's side. He caught her as her legs finally gave out, hidden from the crowd by the podium. "You didn't tell them everything," he whispered, helping her to a chair. Sarah managed a weak smile. "They don't need to know about the pain, Dad, or the nightmares, or how it feels to have your own body constantly rewriting itself." She looked out at the still buzzing crowd. "They just need to know it's possible, that we found a way to share our strength." Kavia approached, her antennae dimmed with concern. "The latest readings suggest accelerated deterioration. We need to consider." "No more treatments," Sarah interrupted gently. "No more attempts to stabilize my condition. What matters is that we've mapped the process. Others can follow a safer path now." James felt his heart constrict. His daughter had become the bridge between humanity's remarkable resilience and the wider galaxy's need for it. But bridges, he reflected sadly, often bore the heaviest burden of the crossing. The synthesized adaptations were offering other species. Sarah continued, her iridescent eyes bright with purpose despite her exhaustion. "They're stable because we learned from my mistakes. Each failure, each setback in my transformation, taught us what not to do. That knowledge, that's my real gift to the galaxy." The lights of the amphitheater caught the sheen of her altered skin, making her seem to glow from within. In that moment, she looked less like a human who had been changed and more like a glimpse of what humanity might become. A species that didn't just survive adversity but transformed it into opportunity, even at great personal cost. "We've done it, Dad," she whispered. "We've given them what they needed most. Not just our strength, but our ability to adapt, to change, to become more than what we are." And as the Galactic Medical Congress continued its excited discussions about the future she had helped create, Sarah Chen closed her iridescent eyes, finally allowing herself to rest. She had become more than a test subject or a breakthrough. She had become a bridge between what was and what could be. The price had been high, but the gift she had given the galaxy would echo through generations to come. Legacy of Resilience. 5 years after Sarah Chen's groundbreaking presentation at the Galactic Medical Congress, the observation deck of the newly christened Chen Institute of Xenobiological Adaptation hummed with activity. Through its vast windows, Earth glowed like a blue jewel against the backdrop of space, while ships from dozens of species docked at the station's numerous ports. Dr. James Chen stood before a holographic display of his daughter's final molecular scan, his fingers tracing the intricate patterns that had become her legacy. Sarah had passed away 2 years ago, her transformed body finally succumbing to the strain of its constant evolution. But what she had started had grown beyond anything they could have imagined. "The latest results from the Meridian colonies are in," Dr. Kavia Nellerks announced, her crystalline form catching the light of distant stars. "The third generation of adapted settlers is thriving on worlds we once thought uninhabitable. Their children are being born with natural resistance to the environmental toxins." James nodded, a bittersweet smile crossing his weathered face. Sarah would have loved to see this. She always said the real breakthrough wouldn't be in individuals, but in how we could help species evolve together. The Institute had become the galaxy's premier center for adaptive research. The protocols Sarah had developed, refined through her own trials and sacrifices, had opened doors that centuries of conventional science couldn't breach. But more than that, it had changed how the galaxy viewed humanity. Admirals Extel, now a regular visitor to the Institute, clicked their mandibles thoughtfully as they studied the latest data. "When we first encountered humans, we thought your resilience was just a quirk of evolution, an accident of being born on a death world. We never imagined that we'd end up teaching the galaxy how to adapt." James finished. "Neither did we." Sarah used to say that humanity's gift wasn't just surviving, but learning how to share our survival with others. The holographic display shifted to show a map of known space, with bright points indicating where the adaptation protocols had taken root. Hundreds of worlds that were once too hostile for settlement now hosted thriving communities. Species that had been confined to narrow environmental bands were exploring new horizons. The Korthos Collective sent another petition for access to the protocols. Kavia mentioned, her antennae flickering with a mix of emotions. The same species that had once threatened Earth with extinction now sought to learn from humanity's wisdom. Approved, James said quietly. Sarah was clear about this. Knowledge of adaptation belongs to everyone, even former enemies, especially them. Through one of the observation windows, a group of young xenobiologists, a mix of humans and aliens, could be seen working in one of the advanced laboratories. They moved with the easy familiarity of colleagues who had transcended their biological differences, their diverse anatomies complementing each other's work. You know what the younger generations are calling us now. Tixla, who had remained a close colleague through the years, chittered with amusement. The adapters, not just humans, all of us who've embraced this new path of guided evolution. They say we're writing the next chapter of life in the galaxy. James watched as a young Ardanian researcher successfully processed a sample of toxic material that would have killed her ancestors instantly. Her adapted biology, built on the foundation of Sarah's sacrifice, handled it with ease. We've come so far, he mused, but I sometimes wonder if we've only scratched the surface. Sarah believed that adaptation wasn't just about surviving hostile environments. It was about becoming something more than we were designed to be. The station's AI announced the arrival of another research vessel, this one carrying scientists from a newly discovered species seeking to join the adaptation program. The galaxy was changing, growing, evolving, all because one human had dared to push the boundaries of what was possible. As James prepared to welcome the newcomers, he paused by the memorial wall near the Institute's entrance. Sarah's image, captured before her transformation, smiled out at visitors, her eyes still holding their natural brown color. Beside it, a more recent hologram showed her as she had been near the end, changed, but undefeated, her iridescent eyes shining with the light of discovery. The inscription below read, "To adapt is to live. To share adaptation is to live forever." Sarah Chen, pioneer of universal adaptation. "You were right, kiddo," James whispered to the image of his daughter. "The price of progress was high, but the gift you gave the galaxy, that's immortality." Above him, the endless stream of ships continued to arrive, carrying seekers and dreamers from across the stars. Each one came hoping to learn humanity's greatest lesson, that true strength lies not in merely surviving adversity, but in transforming it into opportunity for all. In the vast tapestry of space, Earth still spun, the death world that had forged humanity's resilience. But now it was more than that. It had become a beacon, a symbol of how far life could evolve when different species worked together, learned together, adapted together. Sarah Chen's legacy lived on in every successful adaptation, every new world settled, every barrier overcome. She had shown the galaxy that the future belonged not to those who resisted change, but to those who embraced it, shaped it, and shared it with others. The age of universal adaptation had begun, and with it, a new chapter in the story of life itself.